My son David screamed at me in front of 30 guests at Christmas dinner. "Margaret, if you want to stay here, pay rent like everyone else or find somewhere else to live." What David didn't know was that this 2,500 square foot penthouse overlooking the Thames in central London, where he bragged about living thanks to his brilliant career as a civil engineer, belonged to me. The silver Mercedes he parked every evening in the underground garage, mine. The platinum credit card his wife Sophie used at Harrods for designer handbags, mine. Everything, absolutely everything was mine. I am Margaret Bennett. I'm 66 years old, and this is the story of how my silence nearly destroyed my only son and how breaking it saved him. The aroma of roasted goose filled every corner of the penthouse. I'd been working since dawn, preparing the mince pies, homemade trifle, and roasted chestnuts David had loved since childhood. 30 people were settling into the dining room: cousins, uncles, David's colleagues, Sophie's influencer friends. The table sparkled with fine china and crystal glasses reflecting the lights of the Christmas tree. I moved between kitchen and dining room, serving, clearing plates, refilling glasses of French Bordeaux. My apron was stained with gravy. My silver hair pulled back in a simple bun. My hands, marked by years of hard work, trembled slightly as I held the heavy serving platter. "Margaret, sit down for a moment," my cousin Elizabeth told me with that condescending smile I knew too well. "You've done more than enough." "I'm fine, really," I replied, forcing a smile. From my position near the open kitchen, I could see the entire dining room. David sat at the head of the table in his crisp white shirt and that Tag Heuer watch Sophie had given him last year. He was talking to his cousin Richard about his latest project, a bridge renovation in Westminster. "This quarter has been absolutely mental," David was saying, gesturing with his wine glass. "The client's pushing hard on deadlines, but the salary for a senior engineer in London isn't too shabby. Enough to maintain this place, the car, everything." Sophie, sitting beside him in a crimson dress that probably cost more than a teacher's monthly salary, smiled with satisfaction. Her perfectly manicured nails sparkled as she stroked David's arm. "And even so," Sophie added, raising her voice so everyone could hear, "the bills never stop coming. This flat, the decor, maintaining our lifestyle, nothing comes cheap in central London." Several heads nodded knowingly. My Uncle George cleared his throat. "They're right. Rent in this area is impossible. $3,000 to $4,000 monthly for anything decent." "Exactly." David straightened in his chair. "That's why I always say you must work hard. Nobody hands you anything for free in this city." I felt a knot tighten in my stomach, but kept serving the goose. Nobody looked at me. Nobody noticed how my hands gripped the serving spoon harder than necessary. The conversation continued revolving around money, the cost of living, how difficult it was to make ends meet, said by people who'd just asked for their 4th bottle of $60 wine. Then it happened. David wiped his mouth with his napkin, took a sip of wine, and looked directly at me. There was something in his eyes I recognized immediately, the same determination his father Thomas had when making important decisions. "Mum," he said, with a tone that cut through all conversations. "Since we're discussing household finances." The dining room fell silent. 30 pairs of eyes turned toward me. "I've been thinking," he continued, placing his glass on the table with a soft but firm thud, "that if you want to continue living here with us, you should contribute toward the rent, like any adult sharing a space. It's only fair, isn't it?" Time stopped. "And if that's difficult with your widow's pension," he added, looking around the table for approval, "perhaps it would be better for you to find something more within your means." Sophie nodded, taking a sip of wine. "These days, everyone must be responsible for their own expenses, even family. Especially family, actually. We should be honest about these things." I looked around the table. My cousin Elizabeth avoided my gaze. Uncle George coughed uncomfortably, concentrating on his plate. I saw several guests nod slightly, as if saying, "Makes sense." Aunt Patricia even murmured, "Well, it's true that at our age we need to be more independent." Nobody, Not a single person raised their voice in my defense. Nobody said, "How dare you speak to your mother like that?" Nobody asked, "Are you seriously asking your mother to leave on Christmas?" The silence was so dense I could hear the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hallway. I felt as if 30 years of sacrifice, of sleepless nights building an empire so my son could have a future, evaporated into the air-conditioned penthouse. Carefully, I placed the serving spoon on the counter. I folded my napkin and set it beside my untouched plate. I stood up, feeling my knees crack slightly. "Thank you all for coming," I said in a voice so calm that even I was surprised. "This will probably be the last Christmas dinner I spend in this house." David blinked, confused. "Mum, you don't need to be so dramatic. We're just having a realistic conversation." "You're absolutely right, David," I interrupted him, looking directly into his eyes. "It's time to be realistic." I turned and walked toward the hallway leading to my bedroom. Behind me, I heard uncomfortable murmurs, the scraping of chairs, someone trying to resume conversation with a forced, "So, who wants dessert?" I closed my bedroom door. The sound of the latch was soft, but in my head it resonated like the closing of a complete chapter of my life. I sat on the edge of the bed and looked around the modest room that had been my refuge for 3 years. A single bed, an antique wardrobe, 2 photo frames on the nightstand. I picked up one of them, Thomas and me, on the day we inaugurated our first property in Shoreditch. I was 36, wearing a simple floral dress, my hair pulled back. Thomas held the ceremonial scissors, ready to cut the ribbon. Behind us, a modest 3-story building. Our first dream come true. How did I get here? How did I go from being a young mother with a dream to a widow supposedly dependent on her son? Let me tell you the truth nobody at that table knew. Thomas and I met in rural Scotland. I was 21, working as a housemaid. He was a construction worker, 24, with the most hard-working hands I'd ever seen. We married 6 months later in a small ceremony at the village kirk. Our honeymoon was a weekend in Edinburgh. When David was born, we lived in a 280-square-foot studio in East London. Thomas worked construction 12 hours a day. I did bookkeeping for small businesses from home, with David sleeping in a Moses basket beside me. Every pound we earned went into a metal box hidden under the bed. No luxuries, no holidays, just work, saving, and one dream: to own our own property. It took us 14 years. 14 years of counting pennies. 14 years of declining dinners with friends because we'd already eaten. 14 years of charity shop clothes. 14 years watching David grow up in that tiny studio. In 2002, we finally bought our first flat, 480 square feet in Shoreditch, for $52,000. We renovated it ourselves. Thomas installed the plumbing. I painted the walls. David, at 7 years old, handed us tools. We rented it to a young couple for $450 monthly. That money went into another box, then to another property, and another. Thomas had a gift. He could see a dilapidated building and visualize exactly how to transform it into something beautiful. I had another gift. I could make every pound multiply in the ledgers. In 2008, we bought our 6th building. Our solicitor suggested creating a company to handle everything legally. Thomas thought of the ravens he always saw at the Tower of London, those resilient birds that never left. Bennett Properties, he said, like our surname, but with wings to soar. Together we survived the 2008 financial crisis. When others sold in panic, we bought strategically. Buildings in Camden, flats in Covent Garden, commercial spaces in Mayfair. By 2016, Bennett Properties had 52 properties in its portfolio valued at $42 million. And then, one gray Tuesday morning in October 2018, Thomas clutched his chest while reviewing blueprints in our office. "Margaret," was the last word he said before he collapsed. The hospital informed me it had been a massive heart attack. "He didn't suffer," the doctor said, as if that were any comfort. I opened the nightstand drawer and took out a manila folder. Inside were documents nobody in this house knew existed. Articles of incorporation, Bennett Properties LLC, share distribution, Margaret Bennett, 85%, executive director, James Morrison, 15%, property contracts, penthouse, Thames View, Central London, owner, Bennett Properties LLC, vehicle registration, Mercedes-Benz E-Class, registered to Bennett Properties LLC, authorized temporary user, David Bennett. Credit card statement. Additional card, primary account holder, Margaret Bennett. Authorized user, Sophie Bennett. I slowly flipped through the pages. Each document was a reminder of what I had built, of what I had allowed my son to believe was his achievement. David had finished his civil engineering degree. He got a position at a respectable firm earning $2,900 monthly. Good for London, but not enough for the lifestyle he'd always dreamed of. One day he came to visit me at the Bennett Properties office. I kept a low profile, working from a small back office while James handled public meetings as CEO. "Mum," David said, sitting across from my desk, "I want to move out on my own. I found a flat in central London, but it's $2,800 monthly. With my salary, it's possible, but incredibly tight." I looked at my son. He had inherited Thomas's eyes, that determination. But there was also youthful naivety that didn't yet know the real price of things. I opened the Bennett Properties system on my computer. "We have an empty penthouse on Thames View," I told him. 2,500 square feet, renovated 2 years ago. Market value $4,200 monthly. David's eyes widened. "Mum, that's completely out of my budget." "I'll rent it to you for $1,500, I said. "It's an internal discount, employee rate, family rate." "Seriously?" His face lit up like a child's at Christmas. "But won't you need it?" "I'm fine in my flat in Brixton," I lied. In reality, that Brixton flat was also mine, but he didn't know. "Besides, I prefer living simply. You're young. You deserve a nice place." He signed the contract that same week. 2 months later, Sophie appeared in his life, a fashion influencer with 75,000 Instagram followers. I saw her posting photos of the penthouse. My engineer boyfriend has impeccable taste in spaces. When they married, I gave him something else. An additional credit card linked to my account. "Just for emergencies," I told him, "in case you ever need something important." Something important became dinners at Michelin-starred restaurants. Emergencies were $2,500 handbags. I received the statements monthly and paid them in silence. $800 here, $1,400 there, $4,200 on a trip to the Maldives. I never said anything. And when David asked if he could use one of the company cars to better represent himself in client meetings, James signed the authorization, which I approved from my small back office. I took out my mobile phone. It was 11:52 p.m. on Christmas night. Outside, fireworks from some private party illuminated the London sky. I dialed a number on speed dial. "James, it's Margaret." "Margaret, happy Christmas. Is everything all right?" His voice sounded worried. James Morrison had been Thomas's right-hand man. After my husband's death, he'd become my confidant and the only one who knew the full truth about my role in Bennett Properties. "I need you to prepare all documents related to David first thing tomorrow morning," I said, looking at the photos on the wall. "The lease agreement, the vehicle authorization, the credit card statements." There was silence on the other end. "Margaret, are you certain?" "Completely certain," I replied. "It's time for my son to learn the true meaning of the word independence that he loves using so much." I took a suitcase from the closet and started packing. 3 blouses, 2 pairs of trousers, 1 jumper, undergarments, comfortable shoes. Everything fit perfectly in half a suitcase. I stopped in front of the mirror. A 66-year-old woman looked back at me. Silver hair, wrinkles around the eyes, hands marked by years of work. I had spent nearly 40 years building something meaningful, and in the last 3 years, I had allowed my son to trample that legacy while I served dinner in silence. Why did I do it? Because I wanted him to be happy. because I thought if I gave him everything, he would naturally feel grateful. I was wrong. Silent love that sets no boundaries isn't love. It's complicity with selfishness. I closed the suitcase. The sound of the zipper was final. I opened the bedroom door. The sound of laughter and music came from the dining room. They had resumed the party, probably thinking I was crying in my room. I dragged the suitcase down the hall. When I reached the door, I turned one last time. "When I deem it necessary to communicate," I said softly to David, who had followed me, "I will. Happy Christmas, David." I closed the door behind me. For the first time in 3 years, I breathed without the weight of a lie crushing my chest. The real lesson was about to begin.